Yechury, sir, thank you for coming. All my colleagues gathered here this afternoon, students. First, we need to thank Mr. Yechury for accepting this invitation. He's been traveling, and this evening again he's leaving for overseas. This, sir, is a very special occasion for us. We were founded 91 years ago, as you know, in really the crucible of the freedom and national movement, and going through the vicissitudes of those difficult times, Jamia has managed to retain, with a great passion, a nationalist and a secular character. We do believe that nationalism is not the sole property of our friends on the right. We are thankful for you for having made time to us. For your consumption, I don't need to introduce Mr. Yechury for what he has been, except that he had the honor of being a student in my college. So I think he was in the first year when I was finishing my BA. We went to do better things in the civil service, and he sort of loitered around, and now, of course, he happens to have made it to Parliament. And then, of course, on an even more lighter note, till today, I really thought that there were two genuine communists left in the world. One was Fidel, one was myself. So now today I'm forced to add him into this. But without much ado, thank you for all being here. And you, sir, may I invite you for this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Najib sir, Mr. Vice Chancellor, respected members of the faculty, and my dear students, brothers and sisters. I must say I was indeed very flattered when I heard Najib sir talk about me in the way he talked about me. And I'm actually looking forward to the day that he retires so that he can join my party. So that he's no longer constrained within the limits of official responsibilities. And I can assure you that we won't allow him to loiter around. We'll make him work. We'll make him work. Yes, I'm very honored and very happy to be here. And thank you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, for inviting me for this Foundation Day. And honestly, I must tell you that I have not come here with a structured lecture, which is something I hate when we speak. When I was a student, when somebody did that, I mean, except in the classroom, of course, where we had no option. But with no offense meant to the faculty. But outside of it, I mean, we always would rather have a chat, discuss, and which I think is much more useful than only a one-way monologue or a harangue from my side. So that's what I precisely wish to do. At the outset, I think I'm very honored to be here at your Foundation Day. And 91 years, it actually precedes the formation of the nascent Communist Party of India by 1 year, which was formed in Tashkent in 1920, which of course took a form by the time of 1925. But in that sense, you're older to us. And I mean, the institution is older to us. And in that sense, you're also co-travelers in the process of how we built modern India as we know of it today. I mean, therefore, what you asked me to speak today on youth and democracy and secularism, I mean, that is something which cannot be detached from the vision of India that we have. I mean, unless you speak of that vision, neither democracy nor secularism makes any sense. And the youth will end up only, drifting to have their own careers and purpose without having either a vision or a passion on what they should do. So therefore, let's begin the journey from where the Jamia Millia began the journey, and what was the issue which I believe is still the issue today in India, that needs to be resolved, which has not been completely resolved. And that is that during the course of these 90 odd years, or if you actually literally, if you go back, it is actually 90 odd years, because it's in the decades of the 1920s, that amongst the youth of those days, a big debate began as what ought to be or what should be the conception of an independent India. What do we mean by an independent India? Why are we fighting for freedom from the British? What do we want to create? And in answer to that question, three streams developed. One was, of course, the dominant stream that was led by the Congress then, a stream which said an independent India given India's diversity. I mean, you don't have any country in the world today which has a diversity like ours. Impossible. Your census lists how many? 1,056 languages. I mean, these are those for which they found some script. For those there are no scripts, I don't know, I mean, how many there are. But the point is, you have these liberal languages, cultures, I mean, whatever differences you have. But given this diversity, the concept of an independent India could not have been anything else but a secular democratic republic. Now, this was the vision that was that day with the Congress. Now, the left, going back into the same history, had a vision that was not really contradictory or in conflict with the Congress vision, but found that vision inadequate. That merely having a secular democratic republic is not sufficient to define what ought to be the vision of India or conception of India. An independent India will have to be a country where the political freedom of our people that we'll achieve after independence is truly transformed into the economic freedom of our people, where there is actual economic empowerment of the people, and whereby democracy and secularism both can have a content where people can exercise their rights, and the capacity to exercise their rights is directly dependent on economic empowerment. You have the right today, but you don't have the capacity to exercise. I mean, that doesn't doesn't fill up the ball of secular democracy. So we said that struggle will have to go on to the economic independence of the people, and therefore socialism. That was the target of the left. As opposed to these two, there was a third vision that emerged again in the decade of the 1920s, which was articulated for the first time very chillingly, I would say, by, if I can use that word, by the RSS that was formed in 1925, and by the Muslim League that was then evolving itself into an independent entity. It was of course formed earlier, but nevertheless you had a commonality with them. This third vision, which I would say was a vision that saw India's future, or future of independent India, as a country that is defined by the religious affiliation of its people. So you had the RSS articulating the Hindu Rashtra, saying that independent India can only be a nation for the Hindus. And this came out so chillingly in Golwalkar's 1939 treatise that he wrote, when the slogan in Hindustani or Hindi was Swaraj. So he said, what does Swa and Raj mean? Swa means we, people, and Raj is Raj. So he said, what is people's Raj? And the definition, the elaboration of the people's Raj he gave as the Hindu Rashtra, saying that Hindus and Hindus alone can live in this country. Anybody else belonging to any other religious denomination will have to subserve the Hindus and accept their way of life, etc., etc. I mean, all these we've quoted so often, I'm sure all of you are aware of. But that was chillingly articulated in 25. And then there was a twin expression of this third vision, which talked of the religious denomination of the Indian people. One was the RSS vision of Hindu Rashtra, and the other was the vision of a Islamic Republic that was advocated by the then Muslim League. Now both these are also parts of your national struggle. I mean, they're also, in that sense, if we talk of heritage of 91 years old or 90 years old, I mean, these also were born out of here. But these two were in direct antagonism with the first two visions that we spoke of. Now, this direct antagonism in which they existed was the seeds of conflict that eventually consumed the life of the Mahatma, and that eventually led to the partition of our country, which was very admirably aided by the British. I mean, who wanted, and British have this legacy, that wherever they had the colonies, whether it's Israel, Palestine today, whether it's Cyprus today, whether it's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh today, I mean, the whole policy is for the next 60 years, let their economic interests be preserved, divide the country and the people, let them fight. That was their policy, of course, but it really aided. But I'm not going into parts of that history. So therefore, it is not unnatural, or it is not, something surprising that you will find that when Muhammad Ali Jinnah spoke of the two-nation theory in 1941, 2 years before that, in 1939, as the president of the Hindu Mahasabha, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar speaks of two nations in India, one of the Hindus and one of the Muslims. So this convergence of this third vision, the twin expression, is not something that is only the property of one side or the other. This convergence was actually because of their understanding that the religious denomination of the people should be the foundation for India. Now, why I say I'm just gone into this is, today if you actually think about the whole political situation in our country, it is actually still a battle continuing between these three visions. Now that political issue needs to be resolved for India's future. Now that, on this issue, I'll stop here, otherwise, how long, sir, would you allow me to?
Time's all yours.
Really? What is your time of one period of all of yours?
50 minutes.
50 minutes. No, I started there. Okay. So beyond that, I don't think concentration will remain. So if this is the battle today, if what you're seeing today, whether it's Anna Hazare's movement, whether it's a question of RSS supporting it or not, whether it's the Congress and the RSS coming into it, but the left articulating, saying that I'll come to it, what we're articulating, in essence, what you're seeing today is actually the battle between these three visions. What you're finding also is caste association today is essentially a protest, and I think a very genuine protest, against the fact that where is that economic empowerment of the downtrodden that you promised 60 years ago? Now, if that is not coming, then as caste they will assert. And there is no way you can rubbish it aside saying that this is casteism. Unless you address the basic point of why have you not delivered on the promise of providing them economic empowerment and equality. Now, these are issues, therefore, when you look at it, when you're talking about youth, democracy and secularism today, the youth, that is you, today inherit this legacy. You inherit this battle. And you have to take a position on what sort of an India you want to live in. And as Nawab Singh Saab said, we are reaching, we are, I think, almost a senior citizen now, so we are on our way out. It's up to you to which sort of India that you want. But you will have to resolve this battle between these three visions of what ought to be India, and that is the backdrop in which the youth today will have to operate. Now come to the youth and come to India today. What is it that you are finding? The Prime Minister is readying himself to go to the G20 summit. And today all of us are proud that the Indian Prime Minister is rubbing shoulders with the high and mighty of the presidents and prime ministers of all the major countries in the world, so-called sitting on the high table. You sat on it, sir? So neither is I. But sitting on the high table, so to speak, as they say in this era. So there's a sense of pride. See, India has arrived, India has dominated. But then look at the reality. Why did the G7 have to actually expand G7 into G20? Now that, if you actually look at it, look at today's papers. What do they tell you? That the Eurozone today is beseeching China to actually save it. So in the 1980s, when we were growing up, people would attack us saying that you are communists, but Deng Xiaoping in China says that socialist China requires capitalism to develop. So I jokingly tell them today, look at capitalism today, they require socialist China to help them out of their trouble. So today look at this, that China is required. Likewise India, likewise Brazil. What are all these emerging economies today? They are the power engines of world economy at the moment. So without us, they cannot get out of their crisis. Now why this crisis, how it happened is a different story. I mean, that we can get to. But this crisis, what have they done? What has the US, what has all the European powers, I mean, what have they done to get out of the crisis? These financial corporates, they have been very, very indiscreet, and they have given cheap loans, because of which they have collapsed, and because they have collapsed, the world financial market collapsed, and because of that the economy is in recession, and therefore let us bail out those companies. You spent, according to the US Federal Reserve, the conservative estimators in these 2 years, they spent $14 trillion. Trillion. You know what a trillion is? 12 zeros you add after that. $14 trillion they have spent in bailing out these corporates. Now where did they get the money from? They got the money from all the governments, borrowed heavily in order to do this bailout package. So now how are they going to finance their borrowing? That they've already borrowed and bailed out these companies. The companies are making their profits. They're giving bonuses to their executives. The same people who created the crisis are getting bonuses today. And then how are the governments trying to make up for this debt? They are saying austerity measures. The working hours will be increased from 8 to 10. The working days will be increased from 5 to 6. And pension cuts, salary deferred. And in that sense, it's the working people who are paying the burden of the debt that the government undertook to bail those financial corporates who caused this crisis. So what did they do? Convert corporate insolvencies into sovereign insolvencies. Countries are going bankrupt. Now the whole effort is how to save Greece. Tomorrow is going to be Portugal. Day after is going to be Spain. Now in that situation, you have suddenly India with let's say today, this year the growth rate will be less, but nevertheless around 8%. China with it averaged 10% for the last 35 years. You'll have Brazil with around 7%. So they suddenly see these countries as important because they can sustain the global economy. So G7 becomes G20. And we go there and feel very happy that we are there. But what is the Indian reality today? Through these years, 20 years, last 20 years, let's take only the last 5 years. Again, I don't want to bore you with statistics, but let me give you one. In the last 3 years alone, when this crisis began in the world, you had at that point of time 26 Indian billionaires. Remember, when India counts India in INC, India Incorporate, or Corporate India, when they count, they don't count in rupees, they count in dollars. So your billionaire is a dollar billionaire. So your $26 billionaires you had 2 years ago. Their number, according to the Forbes, the magazine that publishes the world, according to Forbes, went up to 52 last year. Now, this year, even before the year ends, but this year they have already counted 61. There are 61 US dollar billionaires in India, and what is the value of their assets? They have assets worth 1/3 of our GDP. 61 individuals have assets worth 1/3 of our GDP. And then, on the other hand, our colleague in the Rajya Sabha, poor man, he died, but he was an eminent economist, Arjun Sengupta. He was appointed by the Prime Minister to study what is happening in the unorganized sector. And then he submitted the report to the Prime Minister and laid it in the Parliament. To the Prime Minister's utter embarrassment and this thing and surprise, he laid the report in the parliament. What did it show? 77% of Indians, that is 800 million plus, today survive on less than 20 rupees a day. This is not the left communist propaganda. This is the government's own report. 800 million plus Indians survive on less than 20 rupees a day, and 61 billionaires have 1/3 of your GDP. Now what are we creating? I can go on giving you the statistics. Today you've seen that 1.5 million farmers have committed distress suicide in our country in the last 15 years. That is 10 lakhs a year. Now that is the state of the other India. So whenever I keep saying, we've said this very often, if you have a shining India, G7, G20, Prime Minister rubbing shoulders, etc., all the glitter that you find in the Marine Drive or Argonaut Place, you have a shining India, but as opposed to it, you have a real India, which is the suffering India. So there are two Indias in the making. Now these two Indias that are in the making, whenever I say shining and suffering, in the parliament some of our friends say, no, you're very alarmist, you sound very dangerous, you can't be using shining and suffering. I said, okay, then we'll use the word BPL India and APL India. You can say, whatever you want to do. So they have now come to a very honorable definition of saying India and Bharat. So India is shining, Bharat is suffering. So I say, go back to your constitution, first clause, first article, first clause, what does it say? India, that is Bharat, and that is not even IE in the constitution. They write that is. India, that is Bharat, is the name of our country. Now you have this divide that is widening in our country, and therefore for the youth, yes, they will be a young, educated youth. I am going to. I don't know why they've invited me, but Stanford University wants me to lecture there. That's where I'm going there. But anyway, that's the university where Paul Sweezy and Paul Baran once taught also. So I think we'll go there. But right next to it is Silicon Valley. And my mother tongue is Telugu, so I come from that part, but it's a different story. What I am. Well, my mother tongue is Telugu. I was born in Madras. I've studied in those days of Hyderabad, where I would say my talim was in Hyderabad, and then Hyderabad Dakkan. Then I came to Delhi for my further studies. 40 years I'm here. I am representing West Bengal in the parliament. So what do you call me? Except in Indian, there's no other definition. Now, no. When you go to the Silicon Valley, they say after English, the second language in Silicon Valley is Telugu. There's so many of our youth there, and we are proud of them. They are doing yeoman service, they're taking India's new head, and they are on the frontier of certain technologies. Wonderful. But how many youth does this section represent? My complaint is not against them. In fact, I want that tribe to grow more and more. And that is why today, what is it that is required? And that is what the youth must really be concerned about, and that what is required today is really that promise of empowerment that you gave at the time of independence. That promise of empowerment is something that has to be translated into reality. And today when we say that, at least first of all provide food security. You see the whole controversy between Planning Commission and the Government of India and the Parliament. What is the poverty line? How do you define the poverty line? How many people are poor in our country? Even going by the barest minimum criteria of number of calories that people should consume in a day, forget. They can be naked, they can be sleeping on the pavement, they don't need a house, they don't need clothes. But even if you want to survive with the number of calories, Planning Commission itself says 36% of our people are poor. The actual poor, those without houses, without clothes, without education, if you add, many more. I'm not going to those, but then can we not give them a decent livelihood and economically empower them? When you talk about food security, they say no, there's no money, it's too huge a bill. Your subsidy is too much. How much does it require? Today, forget APL, BPL controversies, who's above, who's below the poverty line. Today, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi headed National, Advisory Committee. The National Advisory Committee has estimated that to give 30 kilograms of food grains to every family in our country, APL, BPL, everybody, at 3 rupees a kilo. We are saying make it 2 rupees a kilo, that's a different struggle. But at 3 rupees a kilo, if you give 30 kilograms for every family every month, the extra cost to the Indian exchequer would be around 88,000 crores. Multiply 88 by 2, what do you get? 1,76,000? What exactly has been looted in one scam in our country is sufficient to provide food security for the whole country. So don't give us this nonsense of saying there are no resources in India. The point is, what is happening to these resources? Through these reforms, you have created what I've often said in the parliament and outside, you have created not capitalism, but you have created what is called crony capitalism, where sweetheart deals are done, which is also the major source of corruption in our country. Because who will get which contract, who will get it at what terms, what will be the cutback, what will be the commission, that decides on who will get what. So I've given you only one example to say there is no lack of resources in our country. What is lacking is not merely the political will also. What is really lacking is that political direction of what is your objective. If your objective is to make quick bucks, then this is possible. Now this is the India that you have. And the youth today are about 54% of our population. And actually if you take people below 40, I'm taking people below 25 years old. People below 25 years old in the last census were 54% of India. If you take those below 40, you're more than 2/3 of India. Now when you're talking of Indian youth, this is 2/3 of India. You have to decide what sort of India you would want. Now we have the resources. The only question is you require a political will to use those resources for the benefit of our people. And that is precisely what is needed today. That is investing in our youth. You give our youth education, you give our youth good health, you give our youth therefore employment, for which you have the money, then you will see there is no need for us to lecture or for anybody to say anything. This youth is going to build a new India, which is going to be a better India and a different India. And the point is, our job is to create the policies where this empowerment is done. That is youth. Talk of India, talk of youth. Now, come, but how will you get this done? If you have to get this done, popular pressures will have to be put on whoever is the government. I'm not talking of politics here. Whoever is the government, popular pressures will have to be put saying that follow the policies where you can actually translate the real potential that India has. Imagine today, 2 years ago, all of you know, surely the Vice Chancellor is more aware than me, one of the most influential papers in Europe, Le Monde, was carrying an editorial, I think 2 or 3 years ago, when they suddenly were aghast at what? An editorial by Le Monde, aghast at saying that India alone is producing more educated and skilled youth manpower every year in its universities and technical colleges than all the universities of the European Union put together. So they were totally scared, saying if this continues for the next decade or so, India is going to overwhelm the intellectual and scientific world. I mean, we are truly going to emerge as the knowledge society. Very good. I'm also proud. All of us are proud that we have that potential. But when is that happening? That is happening today when only 7% of my youth, 7%, 1 out of 100, 7 out of 100, only 7 out of 100 are able, like you, to come to institutions of higher education. When 93 who should have been are not there. Okay, out of the 93, even 50%, let's say, are already gone into work, etc., etc. But even if a large percentage of them are not able to enter, or we have not provided the facilities. Imagine, with 7% of our youth, if this is the fear in Europe and the West, if you increase this to 20, 25, is there anybody stopping India from leading the knowledge society of the world and us become the world leaders? We have that potential. Now to achieve that potential, you would require to put those pressures, popular pressures, that are required in order to shift the trajectory of your policies so that we are able to realize our own potential. And that is where both democracy and secularism become an extremely important element. Because without democracy, there is no opportunity or the avenues for such popular protests to put these pressures on the government in order to change policies in the interest of country and our people. Now, democracy in our country is something people thought, you see, Churchill then thought, he said, what will be, at that point of time, nearly 90% of the people illiterate. So he said, what do they understand? What is the right to vote? But I must say, the visionaries that we had in these 91 years of our history, the visionaries that we had were ones who were rather bold at that time. Imagine in 1950, our constitution gives the gives universal adult suffrage. That is, every individual, then 21 years, now 18 years, every individual in the country, irrespective of anything else, caste, religion, sex, everything else, every individual in the country has the right to vote, right to contest, given the age limits for what? Universal adult suffrage was something unthinkable at that time for an independent country to emerge, but then we took the courage and took the plunge. Today when President Obama came to the parliament, we were all there, and then we were all made to look very overawed when he was signing the golden book. They also call it's not golden, but it's called the golden book in the parliament. And when he signed, what did he say? Greetings from the world's oldest democracy to the world's largest democracy. Okay, we all clapped, courtesy to somebody, and then some of us also did not clap, and that was also noticed, saying the left did not clap when Obama signed, so that is also part of it. So anyway, all this is part of our day. So then suddenly he said, then I had to say it in the house, but somebody was asking me, Hamid Ansari Sahib was in the chair. Then I said, why you were not looking very happy when Obama said this? I said, of course I'm not happy. Because America, the biggest hypocrite in the world, it doesn't tire. It has to realize that it gave the rights to all the blacks, calling them blacks, African Americans. It gave the right to all American Africans or African Americans. When did they get the universal right to vote all across the United States of America? The universal right to vote they got all across America was 1 year after Obama was born. And here comes the man to say from the oldest democracy to the largest democracy. And I tell him, boss, we gave it, the day we were born. And we gave it to people who did not know to read any language, forget their mother tongue. But we gave it to them because we respect individual human beings as equal. A respect which all of you had to give it by force. The right to vote for women, the right to vote for, ethnic minorities, all these came in piecemeal in these countries, while we took the plunge and gave it from the beginning. But then, right then, Ambedkar, when he was presenting the draft, what did he want? He said the political structure that we have created gives one man, one vote, one value. So you're given one man, one vote, and you're given one vote, one value. But you have not given one man, one value. And there is the crux of the problem. Why are we not able to give one man, one value, while you can give one man, one vote, one value? So both has equal value, but not the human being. And that, unless you are able to overcome this contradiction, that we have the, as I said earlier, we have the resources to overcome this contradiction, and democracy is the foundation on the basis of which these popular pressures can be put on the powers that be in governments and successive governments to change their policy direction to actually achieve this, for which we have the resources, we have the potential, but we have to achieve it. And that is what the youth must today aspire to. But this democracy, yes, they thought in 75 we were all arrested, we were all part of that generation, we went through it, and for some time we thought democracy is not going to come back in India. So we went underground and we thought we'll start working from underground. But then suddenly, by 1977, we couldn't believe it. In the middle of the night, those days no television, nothing else, etc. Only one transistor radio, who used to sit in the underground in the hostels, and then slowly the results were coming out. We suddenly heard Indira Gandhi lost. The shock of disbelief in JNU when we were there, when she actually lost. And then you realize that how internalized democracy has become for the Indian people, that saying this is something, what Ambedkar said, one vote, one value, this is something that the Indian people are not going to lose. And that is something that they'll fight for. And similarly, secularism. In India, you cannot think of democracy without secularism. With our diversity and democracy's yardstick, one of the I would say the essential yardstick of democracy is that the success of democracy is measured by the rights and freedoms enjoyed by the smallest of the minorities. Now, unless you have secularism in India, where this right can be universal to anybody believing in any religion or even those not believing in any religion, but unless you have that universal right to everybody, which only secularism can provide, there is no pursuit of democracy in India. So that is why in India, when I don't like this term of democracy and secularism, in India our definition has to be secular democracy. You cannot separate these two. And that is why today, without secular democracy, you cannot build a better India. And that is why when secularism came under threat, like in 1977 when people defeated the emergency and restored democracy, when secularism became a threat, and when there was a real threat in 2004, that once again, when the BJP and the proponents of Hindu Rashtra come back to power, not only was the Babri Masjid just one victim, but then the whole country could actually, because they were reviewing the constitution, they wanted to change everything. There was actual danger of this Republic of India that we founded coming under assault and attack. Yes, the worst critics of the Congress, those who suffered the Congress and who defeated the Congress continuously in West Bengal, Kerala and Tripura, who continuously fight the Congress, we came forward to support the Congress-led government in 2004, saying secularism is something that is non-compromise, that is on which there can be no compromise. And if that has to be protected, it brought together disparate political forces in defense of secularism. So as far as the people and the political process in India are concerned, these two are inviolable foundations of modern India, foundations for a republic. So without these two foundations, the struggle for building a better India is not possible. And without the struggle for building a better India, you cannot end this battle between the three visions that we were talking about. And that battle can only end with the actual empowerment of our people. And that empowerment of the people would mean that the youth, all of you, will inherit a better India. So I think the 2 minutes left to your class time being ended. So I think I'll end it with that. That is why on this foundation day of Jamia Millia, I must say, I mean, every time I enter your campus, I must end it with this thought. I mean, every time I enter your campus, I mean, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of elation, and above all, there's a great sense of relief, sir. Relief in the sense that, I mean, you find, I mean, it's not only a campus, like you said, where there's no communalism and casteism, but also, I must say, there's not a campus where there's even conservatism. And it's so wonderful, you know, to see our youth, you know, not really bothered about what they are wearing, what they are not wearing, you know, and this is something I must confess. That's how we all grew up in Hyderabad in the 1950s and 60s. I mean, out of every 4 friends we had a girl with a hijab, we had somebody in a skirt, you know, somebody who would go to the church in the morning, but he never talked, I mean, knew or even understood it, you know, all these divides that are today dividing the country. Today I was surprised, you know, when we were school children, I mean, in school, whenever Friday, there would be a longer lunch break, Hyderabad. So we were all looking forward to it so that our cricket can be longer, you know, in that lunch break. And there'll be hundreds of teams playing in the school ground, you know, with their own tennis balls, fights, you know, mera ball le liya, mera wicket, you know, all these things. But, you know, instead of normal 40 minutes, you'll get 1 hour 20 minutes. So we are happy looking forward for Friday. So now today, what is the thing? अरे जुम्मा को क्यों देते हो इतना लंबा? हमें क्यों नहीं देते हो मंगल को? अरे ले भाई मंगल को कौन नहीं बोल रहा है? But why are you know, what is this damned conflict? No, what are you trying to fight about and what for? You know, now that is something that we'll have to break. And walking into your university, I mean, I get that feeling, and I must place on record my appreciation, sir, to you as the Vice Chancellor for maintaining and for strengthening and consolidating. I only hope in the future that this atmosphere will further strengthen and actually tell them, like what we also say, and we've been saying this so often, I mean, many of you may have heard me, but remember one thing. If we are talking of India, we're talking of youth, I'll end it with this, but that can only be said in Hindustani. I can end it with that, कि हम लोग जब हम की बात करते हैं, ये हम का मतलब क्या है आज के हिंदुस्तान में? हम होता क्या है? मतलब आप कह रहे हो कि हमारा नौजवान, हमारी जमहूरियत, हमारी सेक्युलरिज्म, अब ये हम का मतलब क्या है हिंदुस्तान के अंदर? जब तक हिंदू का ह और मुसलमान का म ये दोनों मिलता नहीं तो हम कभी नहीं बन सकता, और उस हमको अगर बनाना है तो बिना So that is your job. We'll do our job, we'll do a bit. I think we've done a bit, we'll continue to do a bit as long as life permits. But it's you who will inherit this country as a youth, and this institution will inherit this legacy. So I hope on this Foundation Day, all of you will rededicate yourselves to the objectives, why the university was founded, and you as the youth will play a more participatory role in making India realize its own potential. We are not asking for anything else. We don't want anything from anybody. We are only saying we want policies so that we can realize our own potential. And I hope that is what all of you will do in the future. And thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. And as promised, I have finished within the period, 1 class period. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yechury. This was riveting as expected. One more thing which I wanted to mention to you, from all the things you said about the values that this university tries to impart. I was in Yale last month, and since I was there for 3 weeks, I had an opportunity to interact with their undergraduate students as well as their postgraduate students. And one thing very interesting emerged. The undergraduate students from Yale are from the rich families of India and China and America and so on. I mean, to pay $50,000 a year, you necessarily, by definition, have to come from very rich, obscenely rich families. Incidentally, Mr. Ambani's daughter is also there. A lot of my students come from Mufassal India with families which are obviously socially and economically not there. So when they come to New Delhi and when they come to Jamia Millia Islamia, they are much rawer than the students who you see in real in terms of sophistication and sense of dress and so on. And so you see a difference. You see a difference that the sophisticated child speaks English differently, and here you have a child who's finding his feet in a city like Delhi. But you come to the postgraduate level, you see the MScs and the MPhils here. And you see the MPhils and the MScs and the MAs there. And you see no difference. So what speaks greatly, just not for the Indian intelligence, but also I think a lot for this faculty that we have here, is that the 4 years that the children spend here have actually made some difference somewhere in their mental computers, that by the time they have come into their masters and their MScs, they are as good, as desirous, with the same sparkle in their eyes as students elsewhere. So all we need is this sustained 8% growth, where there will be jobs for them. I think these children are not afraid of competing in any part of India. They don't carry or they don't live under any complex of being Muslims or from the Dalit community or from the OBC community or from the North. There are no complexes here. They owe nothing to nobody. But they do need the economic growth to be sustained, because jobs will then be available. And I constantly tell them that they don't have to, like my generation and yours, look to government jobs. There will be enough in the private sector now to accommodate them. As citizens of this country, you will stand on your own feet.
Yeah,
but
some good people come to the government job.
Well, since we have him here, let's get the most out of it. So if there are any questions to be asked, he needs to catch a plane, so we have some. Oh yeah.
तो आपका पूरा वक्तव्य बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण रहा, और इसमें मुझे 2 प्रश्न पूछने हैं आपसे। पहला प्रश्न कि आप सरकार के तमाम योजनाएं और तमाम उनके जो रिपोर्ट हैं ये बता रहे हैं कि ये विकास दर जिस रूप में बढ़ रहा है और उसी रूप में गरीबी का जो प्रतिशत है वो भी बढ़ रहा है। तो मेरा प्रश्न है, क्या वर्तमान विकास के ढांचे में, जो वर्तमान विकास का मॉडल चल रहा है, इस ढांचे में इस गरीबी को हटाना संभव है क्या? क्या इस बात की आवश्यकता नहीं महसूस की जा रही है कि विकास के वर्तमान मॉडल से बाहर आया जाए और फिर एक नए विकास के ढांचे को तैयार किया जाए? एक चीज पर आपकी टिप्पणी चाहूंगा।
जी, पहली बात तो ये है कि एक चीज याद रखिएगा कि अगर आप अपने समाज के अंदर भी समानता और जो इकोनॉमिक एम्पावरमेंट की बात मैं कह रहा हूँ, अगर ये हासिल करना चाहेंगे, बिना विकास के ये संभव नहीं है। आपको विकास की जरूरत है, कभी जो ऐसा नजर, बिना विकास का आपको ये संभव नहीं है। सवाल ये है कि वो विकास का फायदा किसको जा रहा है, ये है सवाल। विकास की जरूरत है, विकास का फायदा जा किसको रहा है, आप उसके अंदर तब्दीली चाहिए आपकी नीतियों में, ताकि जो अपने पिछड़े हुए ऐसे हैं, जो जाति के आधार पर हो, धर्म के आधार पर हो, या किसी के आधार पर हो, रीजन के आधार पर हो, उनके लिए जो मुनासिब जो मिलना चाहिए, जो नहीं मिल रहा, उसको किस तरीके से दिया जाए। तो यहाँ पर विकास का ये एक और भी बात सही है, विकास का जो आपने स्ट्रैटेजी बताई, मतलब किस तरीके के विकास होगा, इसको अलग हटके नई स्ट्रैटेजियां बनाना बिल्कुल बनाने की जरूरत है। मतलब वो नई स्ट्रैटेजियां ऐसे नहीं हो सकती कि विकास होगी नहीं, विकास चाहिए, विकास के आधार पर जो फायदा जो मिलना चाहिए वो किस तरीके से उसका बंटवारा होगा, वो है सवाल। आप 27 मंजिला आप घर बनवाइए, अब 40 करोड़ का मुंबई के अंदर, वो भी विकास का मतलब नतीजा है। 400 करोड़ का वो भी विकास का नतीजा है। और हमारे खुदकुशी जो कर रहे हैं हमारे मतलब गरीब किसान, वो भी इसी विकास का दौर का नतीजा है। तो सवाल ये पे यहाँ पे है कि विकास का मकसद और उसका उद्देश्य और उसका टारगेट वहां पर बदलने की जरूरत है, वही मेरा कहने का मतलब था। और वो करना मैं मानता हूँ आज के नौजवान आप सब पे है।
Throughout your speech, you have been very critical and very analytical and very centric to government policies and establishment. But you have ruled around 30 years in West Bengal, and there a certain section of society is in the worst form of poorness in West Bengal, which is still reeling under the wraith of poorness. So, your entire speech, I think, is very much contradictory to that practical part. And whatever you are doing, saying, I am not ready to follow it.
Good. Then I think you'll have to do some further homework if you want to follow it. And that homework is not only to go by what the Secularism Commission report said about minorities in Bengal. And the Secularism Committee itself has also said there are many variables that it did not take into account. The largest number of beneficiaries of land reforms in the country amongst the Muslims is in Bengal. The largest number of the people elected to the lower bodies in panchayats or in all the municipalities of Muslims in the country is in Bengal. Now the question is either we decide that we want to solve a problem, or we decide कि तू मैं करना है। नहीं सुनिए एक मिनट, अगर तू मैं करना है तो मैं भी कुछ बातें बोलूंगा, तालियां बजेंगी कहीं और से। तो अब देखिए, देश के अंदर पॉलिटिशियन से ज्यादा माहिर कोई नहीं है ताली बजवाने में, समझे ना? तो अगर चाहिए तो हम भी कर देंगे, प्लेइंग टू द गैलरी। लेकिन अगर आप सीरियस लोग हो और प्रॉब्लम को क्यों हल करना है तो सीरियसली लो बात, और सीरियसली अगर लेना है तो आपको ये सोचना होगा कि बंगाल की भी प्रॉब्लम क्या है मुसलमानों को। कितने इमिग्रेशन हुए जिस इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स को आपको लीगलाइज किया इंडिया ने, और क्यों सिर्फ बंगाल में? क्योंकि बांग्लादेश बगल में है। और क्यों वहीं तक आते हैं? क्योंकि वो मुसलमान हैं। क्यों नहीं उनको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया बाकी स्टेटों में? क्यों सिर्फ बंगाल को उनकी जिम्मेदारी दे दी? पूछा सवाल कभी? अब ऐसे समस्या है जिसके बारे में हमें सोचना है। आप कहते विकास दर स्टेट्स है आपके गुजरात और महाराष्ट्र, और हम पूरा सपोर्ट करते हैं ऐसे जो पीपल हु केम आउट ऑफ डिस्ट्रेस। साइक्लोन हुआ बांग्लादेश में, डिस्टर्बेंस हुआ बांग्लादेश में, लाखों के तादाद में लोग आए, वी वेलकम देम, वी से यस दे शुड बी गिवन इक्वल स्टेटस, मेक देम इंडियन सिटीजन, बट दैट बर्डन यू पुट इट ओनली देयर, इज दैट फेयर? एंड देन हर आंकड़ों में यू विल काउंट एंड के भाई इतने अनपढ़ है, इतने नौकरी में नहीं।
मेरे ख्याल बेटे आपको एक ख्याल रखना चाहिए कि सच्चाई ये है कि औरतों के लिए, विमेंस इमेंसिपेशन के लिए, विमेंस एजुकेशन के लिए, खेती हर मजदूर के लिए, लैंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में जो बंगाल में काम हुआ या केरला में काम हुआ वो कहीं नहीं हुआ। दूसरी चीज़ कि अगर आप कलकत्ता का 1947 का इतिहास लें, कम्युनल राइटिंग वगैरह का, और उसके बाद आप उसका पहलू देखें जो वेस्ट बंगाल में कम्युनिस्ट राज रहा, तो सेकुलर वैल्यूज़ को किस तरह सरकार ने होल्ड किया। जब अडवाणी जी की रथ यात्रा निकली तो ज्योति बाबू का क्या जवाब था अडवाणी जी को? तो वहाँ से यात्रा नहीं निकली, बंगाल लोगों से ही नहीं। आपको ये देखना पड़ेगा कि हिंदुस्तान में जो अभी परिस्थितियाँ बनी हैं वहाँ सिर्फ एक ही पार्टी है जिसपे बेईमानी का कोई आरोप नहीं। मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि कोई पार्टी में कोई बेईमान नहीं होगा कोई ना कोई, लेकिन सवाल इस चीज का सबका एक मापदंड होता है, एक पैमाना होता है, 1 से 10 तक अगर अपन पैमाना देखें। सो वी हैव टू बी प्रैक्टिकल इनटू अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की क्या मजबूरियां होती हैं। इस यूनिवर्सिटी में हम तरक्की करना चाहते हैं लेकिन 5 साल में इसको हम ये नहीं बना सकते, 20 साल में नहीं बना सकते। तो बंगाल की भी वो मजबूरियां हैं, कांग्रेस पार्टी की भी वो मजबूरियां हैं। So I'm not holding a brief for the Communist Party. I want to just say that we mustn't be emotional and try to be disparaging of a movement where the intent is emancipation of the poor. Intent पे हमको जाना पड़ेगा. Yes, there was someone else.
मैं आपसे सवाल करना चाहता हूं कि आपकी पार्टी पर आरोप है कैडर के नाम पर गुंडा पालने का. जो विभिन्न जब नंदीग्राम सिंगूर में हुआ वो यूथ थे, वो सीपीएम के कैडर थे, लेकिन उनमें डेमोक्रेसी की कहीं से कहीं तक चेतना नहीं थी, वरना वो हथियार नहीं उठाते, गुंडागर्दी नहीं करते. तो आप यहाँ इस मंच से उन अपने पार्टी कैडरों को क्या संदेश देना चाहेंगे कि उनको डेमोक्रेसी की गुट्टी नहीं पिलाई जानी चाहिए?
बहुत शुक्रिया आपकी, क्योंकि जो आपकी समझ है टॉपिक का शायद मेरी समझ से बहुत अंतर है और बहुत फर्क है. हमें टॉपिक दिया गया है यूथ डेमोक्रेसी सेक्युलरिज्म, और जो हमने बोला हम समझते हैं कि उसी पर बोलिए. और यूथ को अब देखिए, आपका सवाल ये है कि नंदीग्राम में जो हुआ वो पहली बात सीपीएम के यूथ थे, दूसरी बात सीपीएम के गुंडे थे, तीसरी बात उनके पास हथियार थे, और चौथी बात उन्होंने वहां पे वायलेंस या हिंसा की. ये चारों बातें आप किस बुनियाद पे कह रहे हो? ये चारों बातें हम ये कहना है कि ना इसको कोर्ट कचहरी ने कहा, ना इसके अंदर कोई सबूत है ये आरोप लगाने में, और किस आधार पर आप कह रहे हो? अगर प्रचार है तो आपकी अधिकार है, और उसी डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में हमने बात की. हमारे देश की डेमोक्रेसी की हम रक्षा करेंगे अगर आप झूठ भी बोले. आपको झूठ बोलने की अधिकार है, वो है डेमोक्रेसी. लेकिन झूठ बोलने की डेमोक्रेटिक अधिकार जो है झूठ को सच नहीं बताता है. और जो हुआ वहां पे उसके अंदर अब रिपोर्ट्स आए हुए हैं, और वो रिपोर्ट्स की अगर माध्यम से पढ़ेंगे, जैसे अभी वैसे साहब कह रहे थे कि कोई बात करने से पहले उसकी सब पहलुओं की जांच करें. वो सिर्फ अपने देश को बेहतर बनाने के लिए जरूरी नहीं है, खुद को बेहतर बनाने के लिए जरूरी है. अब अपने आप को खुद को भी बेहतर बनाना है तो अपने दूसरे पहलू भी देखिए. अभी आपने आरोप लगाए, कोई तथ्य नहीं बोला. अब आरोपों का जवाब जो है सिर्फ उल्टा आरोप लगा सकते हैं, उसका कोई मतलब नहीं. तथ्य अगर निकाल कर देखेंगे आप तो वहां पर जो आरोप अब लगा रहे बिल्कुल गलत. अगर यूथ के अंदर, सुन लीजिए जरा, अगर यूथ के अंदर डेमोक्रेसी नहीं होता तो इस 35 सालों के अंदर कौमी दंगे ना होने की परिस्थिति होती नहीं बंगाल. ये नहीं होता कि अगर आप ये क्या नाम है उसको, कुतुबुद्दीन जो गुजरात वाला, शोराबुद्दीन जो भी उसका नाम है, वो नहीं कहता कलकत्ता भेजिए. क्यों नहीं कहा दिल्ली भेजो? क्यों नहीं कहा भोपाल भेजो? क्यों कहता कलकत्ता भेजो? सोचा? जब जिंदगी के ऊपर तलवार खड़ी होती है तो सोचिए, तब पूछिए सवाल नहीं से आरोप न लगाए.
My question is that I have been traveling a lot all over India nowadays and just trying to figure out how many people are.
Beta, can you also introduce yourself and just your post?
Yeah, my name is Asif, and my name is Asif, and I've just completed my bachelor's in history, and so I'm here for this discussion. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. These are interconnected questions to each other. One thing that you have, when you talk about secularism, what is the secularism in my sense, because I have studied and I have been into also in companies with different people, that the Muslim is the largest majority in India after Hindus, second largest, right, after Hindus. But in 63 years of our independence, are we able to provide any strong leadership to one community? I know there have been communal violences, we have undergone various complicated political turmoil just because of communal violence. Second, when we talk about democracy, does it mean that youth today, as you said, that out of 100, 7 youths are able to get admissions in colleges and universities for higher education? But when we talk about those 93 youth, are we able to provide them any kind of support? Because you have been into politics and you have been just constantly into policy and administration making. But my point, because everybody who is doing a labor work, construction work, any kind of work, they have kind of skills in them, irrespective of education. We being educated does not mean we are skilled people and we are far better than them. We're talking about collective efforts to make India a better democracy and secular country. But in those 63 years, are we able to provide any kind of social and developmental reforms to this section of youth, which is, I think, the largest section of this Indian democracy in secularism, irrespective of any religion, being unbiased or biased? Yes, my
That you are not empowering our youth who have the potential, and we have that potential, for that you require the policies. That's precisely the point. You're not empowering them. But as far as your first question that you raised on secularism is concerned, you see, scientifically, and I believe that the definition given in the Indian Constitution, to me, what it means is secularism is the separation of religion from politics and state. My criticism of the Congress and the rule in the country always has been that instead of treating secularism as the separation of religion from the state and from politics, while granting the fundamental right of equality to all religions, all people to embrace the religion they want, and all religions to propagate their religion, which is there in the articles in the Constitution. While doing all that, it is a separation of the state from and politics from religion. My criticism of the Congress is this has been diluted over the periods, which is now currently, not merely fashionable, but that's also policy, is that equality to all religions. Now that, according to me, is a dilution of secularism. So the moment you start practicing equality for all religions, then they will be succumbing. Okay, that is when this appeasement thing comes. Okay, you do this for one, you do this for the other, you do this for the third. But what is required is a complete separation. And I think that is what secularism we all have to actually establish. And that will have to be established over practice.
But one part of your question worries me, Asif.
Yes.
Because you said that you have not been able to provide Muslims leadership, or you haven't been able to provide leadership to Muslims or something. You know, I mean, why would he, or why would the Communist Party, or why would the Congress Party, or why would the Jansan provide leadership to Muslims? M.A. Ansari or Khwaja Sahab, or these, they were not given leadership by anyone. I think the time for young people like you is that you seek no favors from anybody. You know, your question is putting a thought in my mind that perhaps you are still looking for a crutch. And that's something which is flawed. You don't need a crutch anymore. This is something which Maulana Azad said when he was propagating his wish against partition. He was speaking to the Muslims of India and he said that, look, you are not a minority. In those days, 24% Muslims were in India. And he said, 24% Muslims, you are not a minority. The minority will be the Brahmins who are 7 or 8%. The minorities will be the Thakurs who are 8 to 10%, and they are so divided. So consider yourself, consider your advantage that you are casteless and you are educated. So you don't need support from anyone to go into a field and demand your you know, and by your sheer merit. That also should be, shall I say, the expectation of education from a university like this.
That after Indonesia, we are the largest Muslim population in the world. But we are the largest Muslim population which officially is defined as a minority in the country. We are the largest Muslim minority living under a democracy anywhere in the world. And that is what makes it unique. Because after 9/11, after all this, sir, I was a guest of the Westminster and the government of Britain. They were, and one of the things they wanted to understand from us is how are you? This entire diversity, religion, because those days, what do they call that? The Muslim assertiveness or aggressiveness after 9/11. And they said they were getting Muslim leaders, Islamic leaders from Saudi Arabia and all these places. I said, fine. I said, London is the melting pot of the world. And you have how many? Everybody is there. So, you also have your experience. But only told, he said, you please tell us, what can you tell us to improve, how to. I said, all that I can tell you is right. I mean, please, I'm nothing against bringing anybody from any country. But remember, the Muslim in India is a Muslim who lives under a democracy. And that is a very important element of the consciousness of not only the Muslim, but of an Indian. And don't segregate as Muslim, Hindu, etc., etc. Now, if you want a democratic consciousness of the minority, then India is the place where we'll have to come and look at it. Whether it's Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, etc., that is where, when you talk of secularism and this thing, it becomes important that living in this, we are born in this, you're growing up in this, it's part of your ingrained consciousness. That is very important in today's world when you go out, you'll see. So therefore, that is where the importance of democracy, secularism lies.
नाम बता दो अपना।
चंदन झा। सर, आपने पहले सवाल के जवाब में कहा था कि विकास के लिए जरूरी कोर्स होता, विकास के लिए कोर्स है मेरा एमएड एजुकेशन, एलिमेंट्री एजुकेशन। विकास के लिए जरूरी है कि शिक्षा पर खर्च किया जाए, लेकिन बहुत शुरू में ही बात की गई थी कि हमारे जीडीपी का 6% एजुकेशन पर खर्च किया जाएगा, लेकिन अभी तक वो 6% एजुकेशन को नहीं दिया गया है। इस बार भी सिर्फ 4 पॉइंट समथिंग कुछ दिया गया है, जबकि बात की गई थी कि शुरू में हम 6% दे रहे हैं, इस 6% को हम लगातार बढ़ाते जाएंगे। कोठारी कमीशन ने 64-66 में वो आया था, उन्होंने कहा कि अभी हम दूसरे क्रंचेस से गुजर रहे हैं जिसकी वजह से ये नहीं हो पाया, लेकिन एज सुन एज पॉसिबल हम इस चीज़ को अचीव कर लेंगे और बढ़ाते जाएंगे। लेकिन सर, उन क्रंचेस को पार करने के बाद भी अभी तक एजुकेशन को ही उसका वो हक क्यों नहीं दिया गया, जिसकी वजह से डेमोक्रेसी, सेक्युलरिज्म और भी दूसरी तरह की जो बातें हैं जो यूथ से जुड़ी हुई हैं, खास करके हमारा डेवलपमेंट वो हो पाएगा। तो इस पर सर
भाई, ये तो बहुत लंबा चौड़ा सवाल है आपका, क्योंकि ये सवाल 6% बजट का ही नहीं है। हमारी मांग रही और कोठारी कमीशन की रिकमेंड रही 6% लगभग जीडीपी। जीडीपी के हिसाब से कहे तो 4-5 के आसपास क्यों नहीं हुआ अपना बजट के लेवल, जीडीपी के आसपास तो आप ढाई के आसपास है। स्टेट्स को भी मिलाने के, स्टेट बजट्स को भी मिलाने के बाद ये सिर्फ बात हुई थी 6% ऑफ द सेंट्रल एक्सपेंडिचर वुड बी ऑन।
वो भी नहीं दिया गया सर अभी तक।
नहीं किया गया, और क्यों नहीं किया गया हमारा भी समझ में। एजुकेशन का मकसद किसके लिए? आप और हम तो नेक बातें कर रहे हैं कि एजुकेशन की वजह से चेतना बढ़ेगी, एजुकेशन की वजह से कॉन्शियसनेस बढ़ेगी, उसके चलते हुए हमारी मुल्क ही बेहतर होगा वगैरह वगैरह। लेकिन एजुकेशन देने वाले या जो राज्य जो कर रहे हैं, जिनके हाथ में पावर है, उनके लिए एजुकेशन की क्या जरूरत है? एजुकेशन से ऐसे लोग चाहिए जो उनके खानदानों में काम करे और उनके लिए मुनाफा बने। अब उससे ज्यादा लोग एजुकेट हो गए तो गले में घोड़सवार है ना ये लोग, क्योंकि वो बोलेंगे भाई मुझे नौकरी दो, मुझे ये करो, या हमारे जैसे पढ़े लिखे अब राजनीति में आ जाएंगे, हल्ला करेंगे, ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे। अब कुछ हद तक उनको ना एजुकेट करें तो बेहतर, आसान है राज करना। वो भी तो अब ये एक बहुत लंबी चौड़ी, इसलिए मैं सब पहलू मैंने जाऊँ, लेकिन बात बिल्कुल सही है कि 6% होनी चाहिए। अगर वो होता तो अभी तक जो बातें अपन कर रहे हैं वो पूरा ही हो जाता। अगर आज तक 64 से लेकर कोठारी कमीशन रिपोर्ट से लेकर अगर आज तक इन 50 सालों में अगर आप 6% एनुअली सेंट्रल बजट का एजुकेशन का अगर आप इन्वेस्ट किए होते, देन वो पूरी बात जो पूरी बोलने की कोशिश कर रहा था वो सब अब तक हासिल ही हो जाता, नया हिंदुस्तान बनेगा।
सर, आपने कहा एजुकेशन देने की बात, तो अभी एजुकेशन देने की बात तो हाल फिलहाल राज्य ने 1 अप्रैल 2010 को अप्रैल फुल बनाया, ठीक है, तो आपको गुस्सा आया करके आरटीई लेकर आए। उससे पहले तो वो ये तक मानने को तैयार नहीं थे कि हम 6 से 14 साल के बच्चे को पढ़ाएंगे और वो हमारी जिम्मेदारी है। अभी किसी तरह से तो वो इस बात को मानने को तैयार हुए कि हाँ ये हमारी जिम्मेदारी है, स्टेट ने अब ये एक्सेप्ट करना सीखा है। तो इससे पहले जबकि वो हमारे राज्य के नीति निर्देशक तत्व में था, बहुत चालाकी से उसको 45 में डाल दिया गया, और तब कह रहे हैं कि जो साथ में अर्ली चाइल्डहुड तो हटा ही दी कि 0 से 6 ईयर वो बच्चा सरवाइव कर पाएगा या नहीं कर पाएगा।
यही तो पूरी चर्चा भाई, पूरी चर्चा पार्लियामेंट में हुई, पूरी चर्चा अभी भी चल रही है इस सवाल को लेकर। सिर्फ एक संशोधन करके पार्लियामेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अंदर एक अमेंडमेंट करके ये राइट दे देना का मतलब नहीं है कि लोगों को राइट मिल गया। हम यही कह रहे थे कि भाई इसके ऊपर खर्चा कौन देगा। अब उसके ऊपर पहले कहा था कि 20-80, अब हो गया 80-20, मतलब स्टेट्स को 80 देना। अब सब स्टेट कह रहे हम कंगाल है, हमारे पास कहाँ है पैसा, तो ये होगा नहीं। अब फिर वो इस बार आया कि कितना खर्चा पड़ेगा। यूजीसी ने एस्टिमेट किया, यूजीसी ने
आगे आ जाओ, एक बच्चा पीछे है तो माइक नहीं मिलेगा, आगे नहीं करेगा। आप आगे आ सकते हो।
सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है।
एक मिनट यार, जवाब तो दो।
इनको माइक दे दो, फिर तुम ले लो।
अब कहते हैं खर्चा देखिए, एक ही बात सुनो, मैं आपको फूड सिक्योरिटी के बारे में बताया। यूजीसी का एस्टिमेशन क्या है अगले 5 साल में, क्योंकि अगर आरटीई करना है आपको तो नए स्कूल बनानी है, नए टीचरों को नियुक्त करना है, वो 1 साल में तो होगा नहीं, तो आपको 5 साल का टाइम लगेगा। और हर साल में 5 साल के अंदर 35,000 करोड़ रुपए की जरूरत देश भर। तो 5 साल में 5 × 35 हुआ कितना, 1,75,000।
175।
वेरी गुड, 175 हो गया, 1,75,000। आपके 2G स्कैम में कितना था वो ढला, बताओ 176। तो सबको एजुकेशन देना, स्कूल एजुकेशन बाद भी 1,000 करोड़ रुपए बच जाता सरकार। तो ये बात, वही तो बात मैं करूँ, खर्चे मतलब प्रसाधन की कमी नहीं है देश में, सवाल है उद्देश्य का। अब उसको बदलना है तो आप और हम अपने अपने रास्तों से मतलब वो प्रेशर डालें।
जी सर, माय नेम इज मोहम्मद शकील, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट फ्रॉम मैनेजमेंट बैकग्राउंड। सर, क्या आप मेरी इस बात से सहमत है कि हिंदुस्तान में हिंदू मेजोरिटी मुस्लिम माइनॉरिटी को धीरे धीरे खा रही है?
क्या करिए?
हिंदू मेजोरिटी मुस्लिम माइनॉरिटी को धीरे धीरे खा रही है।
खा रही है?
यस सर, क्या आप मेरी इस बात से सहमत हैं कि हिंदू मेजोरिटी मुस्लिम माइनॉरिटी को धीरे धीरे खा रही है? वंदे मातरम के जरिया हमें ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह से दूर रखने की कोशिश की जा रही है। क्या सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदू से था हमारा को कौमी गीत का दर्जा नहीं दिया जा सकता? सेंसस का न्यूट्रल ना होना, किसी भी सरकारी दफ्तर के इफ्तिताह से पहले पूजा या हवन का कराना, या फिर वहाँ भगवान की मूर्ति या तस्वीर का होना, या फिर एजुकेशन मिनिस्ट्री में किसी भी फंक्शन के शुरुआत से पहले सरस्वती की पूजा करना, यहाँ तक कि माइनॉरिटी कमीशन की मीटिंग से पहले वान देवी की पूजा करना।
किसकी?
वान देवी।
वो कौन है भाई?
सॉरी, इट्स वाग देवी। वाग देवी की पूजा करना सर।
यार हमारे जैसे नास्तिकों से ये सब पूछ रहा था। तो मैं समझा कोई भूत है तो मैं तो मार
बेसिकली मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहता हूँ, नॉट ओनली आपको कि पार्टी,
ये नाम बताओ, सवाल पूछो आप।
सर, क्या आपको ऐसा लगता है कि हिंदुस्तान जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो लिखा गया है, जो एक बेंचमार्क दिया गया है सेक्युलरिज्म का, उस बेंचमार्क से दूर है? क्या वाकई हिंदुस्तान एक सेक्युलर नेशन है या अभी भी उसको आगे बढ़ने की जरूरत है?
हाँ भाई, वही तो मैं बता रहा था आपको पिछले 45 मिनट की तस्वीर में कि ये जो सेक्युलरिज्म का जो भी ढांचा हमने अपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो दिया, उसके खिलाफ जो खतरा है, और 3 जो मेरे हिसाब से धाराएं जो थी हमारे नेशनल मूवमेंट में, उनके बीच में जो टकराव है, आज भी वो टकराव चल रहा है। आप एक धारा की बात कह रहे हैं, तो आप एक धारा की बात करो तो चलिए आप अब इसका जवाब तो सीरियस तो ये तो बिल्कुल सही है, खतरे हैं। जब वो धारा सत्ता में होता तो ये सब काम किए हैं जो आप बता रहे थे। अब उसीलिए तो उनको सत्ता से हटाने के लिए हमने कहा आपको, हमने भी वही कांग्रेस की समर्थन की जिस कांग्रेस के खिलाफ हम लड़के चुनाव जीत कर पार्लियामेंट में आते हैं। लेकिन उसके बावजूद सेक्युलरिज्म की वजह से हमने कहा कि ये जरूरी है। तो वो सब तो है ही, तो राजनीति तो सवाल
ये जो तुम्हारा सवाल है ये इट्स वेरी डेंजरस क्वेश्चन एंड आई विल टेल यू व्हाई। Why is India secular? India is secular not because of the Muslims that live in India. India remains secular because 80% of Indians are Hindus. You must understand this very clearly. So therefore, if you see a deity being worshipped somewhere in some office, it is not the fault of Hinduism. It is the problem with that particular officer. अगर किसी थाने में कोई मूर्ति रखी हुई है और उसको कोई रोक नहीं रहा है, वो गलती है सिस्टम की, वो सिस्टम की कमजोरी आ गई। लेकिन मेरा आपसे ये भी मानना है, और अगर आप मध्य प्रदेश में और बिहार में दौरा करें तो कई थानों में आप देखेंगे कि एक मजार बनी हुई है और मजार पे हरी चादर भी है और शाम को थानेदार साहब जाके उस पर दिया भी जला देते हैं। और आप यहाँ से 1-5 मील दूरी चले जाइए लुटियास दिल्ली में बापा नगर में, यहाँ सब सरकारी बड़े अफसर रहते हैं, तो बिल्कुल रोड के बीच में एक दरगाह है, बिल्कुल रोड के बीच में, कि गाड़ी के लिए खतरनाक है। और कोई मुसलमान एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन होता तो उसको तोड़ देता, लेकिन वहां पर वो दरगाह है और शाम को मांदिया भी जलता है और एक हरी चादर भी। आपको ये समझना पड़ेगा कि हर सिस्टम में डिफेक्ट्स और कमजोरियां होती हैं, और वो जो 15-16% कम्युनलिज्म हिंदू कम्युनिटी में है, वो 15-16% कम्युनलिज्म मुसलमान कम्युनिटी में भी। कोई कम्युनिटी ब्रेफ नहीं है इससे।
सिखों में
मुझे अभी सचिन सुबह बता रहे थे कान में कि भाई मुझे बहुत ताज्जुब हुआ अजमेर में कि मुझे पहली दफा कल्पना हुई कि जैनियों में ताज्जुब है, क्योंकि इतना अच्छा धर्म है कि मंगू में कवर्ड है और चींटी को भी नहीं मारेंगे, लेकिन उनमें भी ताज्जुब है। तो आपको थोड़ी सी नजरिया इसमें बढ़ाना पड़ेगा और ये समझना पड़ेगा कि हम लोग सब वो चीज नोट करते हैं कि हिंदुस्तान में आप एक किसी जाके आपको दिया आप जला रहे हो, लेकिन उसको आप रिलीजियस फंक्शन मत समझिए, उसको अब एक सोशल चीज समझ लीजिए कि कोई भी किसी चीज का आगाज होता है तो हम लोग जाके एक दिया जला देते हैं, उसमें कोई बात नहीं। लेकिन हाँ, आपके पेरेंट्स के जमाने में, मेरी वालिदा के जमाने में अगर वो कहते कि साहब आपने कहीं नारियल फोड़ा और मैं नारियल नहीं खाऊंगा, उनको तो उनके लिए ठीक है, लेकिन आपके लिए शायद थोड़ा सा इसमें सोचने की जरूरत है और उदार दिली से सोचने की जरूरत है। तो आप
वंदे मातरम ये भी बोल सकें
जी,
वंदे मातरम ये भी बोले हमारे लगे वंदे मातरम
बोले या न बोले, इस पे कोई किसी को फोर्स नहीं करेगा, क्योंकि ये तो अपनी मंशा है। और जब आप इस किस्म की बात करते हैं तो उससे टकराव होता है।
तो टकराव से बचने के रास्ते निकलने चाहिए ना।
नहीं, कोई जरूरत नहीं है, एक दूसरे से सिर्फ बात होती है, एक दूसरे से बहस नहीं होती। तो इसलिए आप जिस टोन में बात कर रहे हैं वो भी जरूरी है, और इस उम्र में वो चीज समझना बड़ा जरूरी है कि जिस टोन में एक डायलॉग होना चाहिए वो बहुत जरूरी है। इन बातों पे ऑब्जेक्शन नहीं लिया जाता, इन बातों को संजीदगी से सुन के और उनका जवाब भी उतनी संजीदगी से दिया जाता है, क्योंकि ये प्रेग्नेंट सवाल है बहुत मुसलमान माइंड्स में कि क्या 20 साल बाद, क्या 25 साल बाद हमारा कल्चर खत्म हो जाएगा। 20 साल पहले जब जामिया में बहुत लोग शेरवानियां पहना करते थे, अब मैं शेरवानी नहीं पहन रहा। अगर आप जाकिर साहब को देखते और फाउंडेशन ले देखते तो जाकिर साहब यकीनन शेरवानी में आते। तो ये, मगर क्या ये चीजें जो कम हुई, क्या ये डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ कल्चर है कि क्या ये एवोल्यूशन ऑफ कल्चर है? कल्चर्स का मिश्रण होना, गंगा और जमुना का मिलना, तो इस्लाम का भी एवोल्यूशन है और हिंदुइज्म का भी एवोल्यूशन है। इसीलिए हमारी जबान बनी, तो पूरी जो उर्दू जबान बड़ी है, फारसी खत्म हुई, उर्दू आई।
अब यही बता दूं साहब, यही एवोल्यूशन की बात है ना। हमारी जिस कॉलेज की जिक्र कर रहे थे हमारे शास्त्री साहब, वहाँ पे हमारी डिग्री जब मिलनी थी तो हम कुर्ता पजामा पहन के गए, हमको बुला दिया कॉलेज से, कहते आप डिग्री नहीं देंगे। He refused to give us the degree. He said, no, St. Stephen's में आप ये कुर्ता पजामा पहन के, मतलब ब्लास्फेमी। अब बदल नहीं भाई, मतलब जमाना बदल रहा है, बट विल डू। अभी हामिद अंसारी साहब के साथ वही हम कोनिया में थे, जलालुद्दीन रूमी की नज़र पे, तो बातचीत चल रही थी। कोनिया के वहाँ के गवर्नर साहब थे, ये वो बोल रहे थे कि रूमी सूफी ट्रेडिशन वगैरह। तो हमने कहा कि भाई देखिए, मतलब गुस्ताखी माफ़ी, मतलब बुरा मत मानना कि रूमी साहब के दफन होने से कुछ 70-80 साल पहले मोइनुद्दीन चिश्ती साहब भी तो होने लग चुके, और जब तक रूमी साहब जिंदा थे तो वहाँ पे चादर लग रहे थे। तो सूफी ट्रेडिशन इन इंडिया, it goes back, but they didn't like it, they thought they were the origins of Sufi tradition. चलिए वो बात अलग है, but the question is how all this evolved, what the Vaisya is saying, and that is the process in which जो मैं भी आपको बता रहा हूँ, मतलब जिस तरीके से अपनी जिंदगी में हुई, that is the process in which this happened. बिस्मिल्लाह रहमान और रहीम हमें भी बोलने की हक है जितनी आपकी भी है, और वो ही होनी चाहिए, मतलब सबकी, कि मतलब जो भी आप मजहब करना चाहते हो आपकी मर्जी, आप चूज करेंगे तो उसकी हिफाजत जो है ये मुल्क करेगी, उसकी हिफाजत हमारी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन करेगी। और वो आपके हम आते हैं साउथ से, जहां पर रावण की पूजा होती है। आप रामायण की बात करो, हमारे यहाँ पर कहानी है रावणायण, समय नहीं है तो मैं सुनाऊंगा, बड़ी दिलचस्प कहानी है। वहां पे ना नायक है ना खलनायक है उसमें, और रावण है उसका मतलब सब कुछ। और ये बनाता है कि राम को कैसे वो जो है तिगड़म लेके वो ले आता है जमीन पे, ताकि उसके हाथ से वो मर के उसको जो है मोक्षा मिले। The story of Ravana comes to the entire Dravidian.
And this whole controversy that is going on in Delhi University over this Ramayana, this shows Tanvili. If there are 1,000 tales which bring richness to Ramayana, why would we like to, take away something from an intellectual domain, saying that this favors or disfavors? It is different. It would be completely different, and I would be with you if somebody said so about the Holy Quran, because the faith says that is the word of God. But Ramayana certainly is the creation of somebody. So therefore there is no dispute in these things. These things must be debated, but not withdrawn from intellectual domain. आप बेटे कुछ कह रहे हैं?
सर अगर मान लीजिए प्रॉब्लम है, अगर मान लीजिए आप पूरा जो सिस्टम है हमारा, जैसे पूरा सिस्टम है हमारा, अगर वो आप बनाएंगे तो ये ऑब्वियसली ये सही है कि आप अपने अनुसार बनाएंगे। अगर मान लीजिए अगर सिस्टम आप अपने अनुसार नहीं बनाएंगे तो ऐसा तो नहीं होगा आप अगर बना दें और दूसरे दिन आपको खेत में जाकर काम करना पड़ेगा। हाँ सर मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ कि जैसे कि मान लीजिए जो होल सिस्टम है जो बना हुआ है, अगर वो लोग पढ़े लिखे लोग बनाएंगे तो अपने अनुसार बनाएंगे। अगर आज खेत में काम कर ले बना वो सिस्टम को बनाता है तो अपने अनुसार बनाता है। हम पूरे सिस्टम को बना दिए हैं। अब जैसे मैं अगर एक्सट्रीमिस्ट की बात करूं, नक्सलाइट की बात करूं, तो आप पूरे भोजन को अपने घर में बंद करके बोलते हैं कि नहीं गोली चलाना तो पाप है भाई, गोली कैसे चला सकते हैं? मतलब पूरे सिस्टम को आप एक सेंट्रलाइज कर रहे हैं। मेरा क्वेश्चन मेनली ये है कि अगर मान लीजिए आप सर कोई सिस्टम बना रहे हैं तो आप तो ऐसा नहीं चाहेंगे कि मुझे कल जाकर खेत में काम करना पड़े। तो धीरे धीरे उनकी जो पावर है, जैसे एक रिक्शा चलाने वाला है वो 100 रुपये कमा सकता है, लेकिन अगर 100 रुपये अगर मैं कमाऊँ तो कुछ भी नहीं कर सकता हूँ। लेकिन जो पूरा होल सिस्टम है कोई ना कोई जो मेहनत पर बना है, आज हम इतना आगे हैं, पैसे सबके पैसे ले लेकर एक सिस्टम बना रहे हैं, उससे हम सिस्टम को चला रहे हैं। लेकिन अगर एक रिक्शा वाला है, अगर वो 100 रुपये कमा रहा है तो फिर वो कैसे जिंदगी करेगा? अगर वो आप पूरे सिस्टम को एक साथ ले रहे हैं, अगर कोई गोली चला रहा है पैसे के लिए, भोजन के लिए, तो बोल रहे हैं कि वो गलत है। जैसे आज नक्सलाइट है, क्या वो गलत है किसी मामले में? अब मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि क्या जैसे कि अगर मान लीजिए आप सिस्टम को एक जगह भोजन रख दिए, बोले कि नहीं गोली चलाना तो पाप है भाई। मेरा सिस्टम क्वेश्चन ये कि मैं आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहता हूँ कि आप कम्युनिस्ट हैं, तो आजकल के नक्सलाइट है, क्या वो गलत है?
अब ये हुई ना सवाल, मुझे भी समझ में नहीं आया। मुझे भी समझ में नहीं आता वाकई कि आप ये सिस्टम को लेके कहाँ पहुंच गए हो। अब यही तो है हमारा झगड़ा नक्सलाइट से कि वो सिस्टम के खिलाफ ही है वो। हाँ, मतलब कोई भी सिस्टम से खिलाफ है। तो हमारा ये है कि भाई नक्सलाइट भी हमें ही छोड़कर हमारे ही एक हिस्सा भी गलत रास्ता पकड़े। हम नक्सलाइट या माओवादियों से हमारा पूरा जो है, जो हमारा जो मतलब डिस्प्यूट है उनके साथ, जो विवाद है, वो यही है कि जो तरीके वो अपनाए अपने मकसद को हासिल कर। हिंसा के माध्यम से किसी भी जमहूरियत में इस तरीके की बदलाव लाना गलत है।
सर, आप बंदूक देकर बोल रहे हैं गोली चलाना पाप है? आप बंदूक देकर बोल रहे हैं गोली चलाना पाप है?
दिया तो
सर, इस सिस्टम में आप एक जगह सेंट्रलाइज हो, क्या रिक्शा चलाने वाला 10 रुपये में जिंदगी कैसे काट सकता है? फिर वो गोली नहीं चलेगा तो क्या करेगा?
तो बिल्कुल सही है, तो सभी आतंकवाद सही है, तो आप और हम क्या करें? तो अपन लोग चले यहाँ तय कर लो कि खाने की जगह अगर भूखे हो तो खाने की जगह गोली खाएंगे, तो सब मिलकर गोली खाए फिर। हाँ, या कहो कि सिस्टम को बदलो कि खाना मिले।
हाँ सर, सिस्टम
यही तो है ना भाई, मेरी पूरी कोशिश। अब तो 1.5 घंटा हो गया, अब आऊंगा, अगर आऊंगा मौका देंगे वैसे सब तो फिर आऊंगा, फिर 1.5 घंटा बिताऊंगा। मेरी पूरी की पूरी कोशिश यही है कि आपके अंदर एक थोड़ी सी उत्साह पैदा करे कि ये जो सिस्टम है इसको बदलना है। सिस्टम को बदलना है कि बेहतर सिस्टम बनाना है, और उसको बनाना है बेहतर, तो किस तरीके से बनाना, कुछ बातें मैं रखी बाकी तो आगे में सर, क्योंकि आपने इकबाल साहब का जिक्र आया सारी जहां के अच्छा से, एक चीज याद रखो, हम जो है या कम्युनल फोर्सेस के लिए या हमारे मुल्क के अंदर जो मतलब जो हमारी पोटेंशियल है, उस पोटेंशियल को जो ना पूरा होने देने वाली, उन सब के लिए इकबाल साहब का एक उनका मतलब शेर अभी आपसे ये चर्चा सुनते हुए याद है सर, वो जहाँ पर वो कहते हैं कि तेरा इरादा है, इकबाल साहब का तेरा इरादा है कि तेरी आरज़ू, उसका वो है तेरी आरज़ू तुझे मिले, ये आरज़ू पूरी हो। तेरा इरादा है कि तेरी आरज़ू पूरी हो, मेरा इरादा है कि तेरी आरज़ू बदले। तो बदल के एक बेहतर हिंदुस्तान बनाना है जिसके अंदर आपके अंदर एक क्षमता है, तो वो बदलिए। और
Thank you very much, sir. You've taken a lot of your time. 3 things I just wanted to mention to you. One, when you said this, I was reminded of a small instance written by Khalil Gibran many years ago, that he is walking on the streets of Baghdad and he sees a slave sleeping on the parapet next to the road. So he goes to wake up the slave, and people say, no. Let him sleep, he's a slave, he may be dreaming of freedom. And Gibran says that no, I must wake him up and talk to him of freedom. So at the end of this, I think the questions that you have raised, some of the students have raised, have been exceptionally valuable. It only brings home my points are that the university is indeed exceptionally vibrant. You will also notice the marked courtesy and charm that they bring on the table. So we are very grateful to you for your time. But now, considering the interest that you have generated here, and let me also admit that this is easily one of the more invigorating and stimulating sessions that we have had in the last 2.5 years that I've been here, that maybe take the liberty of calling you more often. Like I said before, you have been trying to avoid us, but that shouldn't be so in future. So, with the promise that you will indeed come, and there is a young man whose question has remained, so for the next time, we will bring him here. Okay.
This is a comment more than a question, but I wish your response that your talk is very relevant, like you are talking about democracy in front of Hitler or of Stalin. I'm talking about, as students, we don't have enjoyed any kind of benefits of democracy here in this institution. So, I wish to know what's will stand on re-establishing democracy. I mean, re-establishing students' union here in this institution.
All that I can say is that Students' Union is an institution which not only me, but the UGC, the union, has always recognized as playing an important positive role in the development of the university. And when we were students, we made it a point to make sure that the Students' Union of Jawaharlal Nehru University is not on the statutes of the university, so that when emergency came, the university couldn't ban us because we were not there on the statute. So we functioned. So we are all for the Students' Union, but that your Vice Chancellor is here, you are here, and I can only tell you one thing, that the activities of the Students' Union should be such that it should promote the interests of the students, definitely, at the same time that of the building of the university. And I can take legitimate pride, let me tell you, from the 1970s, and not only me, the JDU faculty does, that they always tell me, poor old, anyway, I don't want to name it, they always say there used to be two offices in the main block. One is the administrative office and one used to be the Students' Union office. And one of the deans in the academic council meeting, where as the president, I also had the right to be a member. He got up and told the then Vice Chancellor, Yechury, there's a dispute on the interpretation of this rule. Now, the dispute on the interpretation of this rule, I would go by the office in my building, that is the Students' Union office, rather than your administrative building, because they are the ones who actually are following and building this university. So the union should also play a very positive, constructive role. No, I don't know the actual, reality situations here, but it's up between you and the Vice Chancellor, and I'm sure you'll work it out. Because the energies of the students should be tapped constructively, and existence of a union will help that, in my opinion. So that's my opinion. So that means you will be holding up my sleeves. Vice Chancellor is facing for a fight, so sir, thank you very much. I think it's been a wonderful experience. So thank you all. And please don't mind, because I have no offense for any type of